Welcome back. The good enough syndrome of houses these days. People used to just wait until the perfect one came, and now people are jumping on them again. And, I think the same can really be said when you think about retirement planning. I mean, I think a lot of people go into retirement planning thinking, I will just come up with the perfect plan, and it's going to be perfect from A to Z, and it isn't always that way. There's lots of things that change during the course of a plan. And Jim Black joins us, founding partner of Absolute Return Services. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks. Great to be here.
And, I've heard you've been on the radio lots of times. You do some radio, and now here you are.
That's right. Several of the things I've done on the radio have been I've done it from my office. So this is the first time I've been in the actual booth.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the booth.
Thank you.
Pretty exciting in here, isn't it? Jim, so, retirement is certainly something people want to do. And even as Michael was saying before, people want to buy a perfect house. I think people want the perfect retirement plan. And, you've done a lot of seminars, a lot of speaking engagements, of course, being on the radio. And in your experience, I bet you've never really seen the perfect retirement plan.
Well, I've never seen someone come in with the perfect retirement plan. What's interesting is most people, when they walk into retirement, they've got a general idea of what they think is going to happen. But going through the economy that we just had, sometimes they weren't planning on it quite as soon. We've had a lot of people come through the office who retired not necessarily by choice. They were planning to in the next year or two, but the economy changed that for them. And so even if they had some kind of an initial plan, boy, life is going to happen to them, whether it's a change in interest rates, whether it's inflation, or the crazy thing that's happening in Washington, D.C., or the stock market on a daily or weekly basis.
And so when people go into these type of plans, you had talked about a lot of your clients are actually in retirement, or they are retired. Are you in retirement, or are you retired, or does it matter?
Oh, most people will call it, when I ask them, they tell me they're in retirement. It's a phase.
It's a place.
It's funny. I'll talk to people all the time, and they'll say, gosh, Jim, I don't have time to come in and see you right now. I'm so busy since I retired.
Right. That golf course just calls their name every day.
Oh, it's the golf course. It's the grandkids. It's the travel. It's that bucket list that they never quite got around to all the years that they were working.
It is amazing. Sometimes the less you have to do, the busier you are. But that's a whole other topic, because what I really want to do is get into this, about retirement. People want to retire. They want a good plan. And one of the big components of that as you prepare is to really avoid money traps, right? And risk seems to be one of those.
Boy, risk is probably the biggest money trap that I see. I sit down and chat with people every day, and one of the things that we discover is that something's happened to their plan. Something's happened that they weren't expecting, whether it's, as I say, the risk of the stock market or a million other things that happen out there. One of the examples that I will typically use for them is when my son Zachary was 5 years old. He came into the front room of our house, and I looked at him and I saw that something was wrong. And I said, Zach, your shoes are on the wrong feet. And he looked at me and he said, Dad, you're teasing me. These are the only feet I have. And we've laughed about that in our family for a lot of years. But the reality is absolutely true.
Should have called Bill Cosby. Things the kids say or whatever.
But what's interesting about that over the years is I hear exactly the same thing. I'll sit down with somebody who says, Jim, I just retired, or I'm retiring next year. And I'll ask them, well, how come you're taking so much risk? 100% of their assets or 90% of their assets are out there flowing with the market. And they'll tell me, gosh, Jim, I have to take this much risk in order to get the income that I really need and want for the rest of my life. The reality is probably the opposite of that. Because they're taking that much risk, the reality is they're probably going to not have that income that they really need and want.
And you made the analogy of, those are the only shoes they have. Do people feel like those are the only choices they have?
They do feel like that all the time. And the reality is that's not the only choice. That's the choice they're used to. Because for the last 40 or 50 years, while they've been accumulating their assets, that was their choice. Either risk and try and get some growth, or no risk and get no return. But that's not the same in retirement. Once they get that last paycheck they're ever going to get for the rest of their life from an employer, that responsibility becomes theirs. And it's not just growth, it's now income as well.
So I actually brought this up, and I want to get to some of the other risks, including health and how long people are living. But the length of time that people are living, coupled with the fact that a lot of people don't know how to financially retire, is that a scary thing to you right now?
I saw a study the other day that AARP did that said exactly that. It used to be, up until just a few years ago, the greatest fear of people was actually public speaking. And then it changed to dying. Now it's actually living longer than your money lasts. And so I think that's a real concern. You think about, the 40 or 50 years that you accumulated assets, thinking that when you got to retirement, you were going to only need that money for 10 or 15 years. Well, now they're saying right now an average person age 65 is expected to live another 25 to 30 years. And that's just average life expectancy. If you think about life expectancy, that's the average. Some of these guys and some of us will live maybe into age 100, 105 is completely within the realm of possibility now.
I saw the news yesterday. There was some 85-year-old playing tennis. He was good.
Doesn't surprise me. You know, it's interesting. The Hallmark people, I don't know that this is really an official statistic, but they sold nearly 100,000 100-year-old birthday cards last year.
And you know, once you get to 100, you don't have a lot of friends, so there a lot of them have dropped off. You're probably not getting them from too many people. Grandkids, handprint, anyways. That's so okay. So people are living older. So I guess the fact that people are staying healthier is actually the big risk people take going into retirement.
You know, I agree with that. The health is one of those issues where we didn't expect necessarily to be doing as well as we did. You know, what's frightening sometimes is the things that used to kill us don't kill us anymore, but they put us into a nursing home or a long-term care facility, which can be another huge risk for somebody who's got a plan on exactly how much income they really want, and all of a sudden they now have an extra $8,000 bill every month.
Just $8,000.
Well, $8,000 if they don't need food and maybe oxygen.
So, I mean, I mean, outliving your money is really one of those big risks. I mean, that being the most, I guess, the most thing that scares people the most. So when you start also looking at health, what are some of the other big traps to avoid when you get into health?
Well, when you start talking about health insurance, the biggest thing right now is the unknown. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, Obamacare was in front of the Supreme Court. We expect to get a decision on that probably in a month or 6 weeks to see how that's really going to affect people. But the reality is it will affect everyone to one degree or the other, and that's the unknown. People think that they want to do something, they want to make sure that they have they have health insurance or some kind of coverage. But even while we're sitting here, the rules are changing. Even some of the Medicare Advantage plans, the funding is being redirected. And so that's a concern. You know, on top of that, there's, as I mentioned a minute ago, that long-term care issue that's blooming out there. I would say that's probably the single biggest financial risk for most people who are going into retirement, is really knowing how much of their own money they can really count on spending and how much they're going to have to maybe give to a facility because of their health.
So when you start talking, I mean, I want to stick on this, the health piece, because people live longer, and I just want your opinion. I'm going to throw a little curveball at you here. But is there an element of Social Security starting too early? I mean, is 62 too early to retire? You had made a comment before we came on the air.
Well, I actually think it is. But you know what? There's a real trade-off here. We do calculations for people every day. And the difference between drawing your Social Security early and waiting until basically age 70, in one example I did, was almost $300,000 difference for that particular couple. And so, though there definitely is an advantage, meaning that every year that you wait past age 62, the monthly amount that you're going to get increases by 8%. And so if you can do that all the way to age 70, you can basically double the amount over what you were going to get at age 62.
Well, I mean, I guess my point would be, regardless of the numbers, how much money comes in or how much when you can wait, people can end up, if you live to 100, there's a good chance you would be retired longer than you worked.
We see that now starting to be a real reality. And you think about the 5 or the 10% that you're saving out of your monthly check, it's not really going to be that much when you realize that you're retired now longer than you actually contributed to that retirement plan. It's I think, something that people really need to take a look at, and something they need to account for in any plan. You know, again, you see studies time and time again that'll tell us that people have spent more time planning a 2-week vacation than they did their retirement. And so, unfortunately, retirement turns out...
But then they want a vacation their entire retirement. That's the amazing part. They'll have plenty of time then. Jim, we have to go to break. Again, Jim Black, founding partner with Absolute Return Services, and some big traps to avoid when you're looking at retirement. And, you know, as people live longer, I think they really do have to take a different approach. I think the other side of that is, you think if your kid says they only have 2 feet, guess what? People who have only thought they could save that 5 or 10% might have to create a new plan too, because they may not be able to accumulate enough to last the rest of their life. You know, a lot of people also would like to save more money, and most people want to save more money by paying less taxes. Boyce Goff is back with us, and now that tax season's over, do you know how you're going to save more money on your taxes in 2012 so you don't have to pay as much 1 year from, last week? We'll be right back to tell you how. My name is Ben Brash, and that's Jim Black. You're listening to Brashenomics.